We're on a mission for kindness today at AM Northwest. We're introducing you to Kind is Better, the new movement to bring our youth together to help spread kindness. Kind is Better Day on AM Northwest starts right now. Good morning, everyone. There's a live look from our Unico US Bancorp Tower building downtown Portland. Welcome to AM Northwest as we kick off Kind is Better. We have partnered up with Live 95.5 and your Northwest Honda dealers to create a mission to connect with local youth to better understand their mental, emotional, and physical health needs. Our goal is to become more informed and better prepared to positively support our youth mental health. Here to share more, please welcome from K2 News, Genevieve Riom. Good to have you with us, Genevieve.
Thanks, happy to be here.
I don't get to see you very often.
No,
so
first time here, and it's the perfect time to be here.
Yeah, so why is this important, focusing on youth mental health?
Well, it's so important because there are so many youth who are struggling with anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. I've done interviews for the past few weeks now, and almost in every single one of the interviews, the kid or the parent will tell me it seems like half the people around them are struggling with anxiety
That
or
is
depression.
sad. Is it that they can't deal with the stress they're dealing with, or what is going on?
Sometimes it leads to that. I think sometimes it starts with anxiety. You know, maybe school is stressful. A lot of it was social anxiety. These kids are really struggling just to interact or feel like they have a place to belong in school, in their community. And so then that will lead them into anxiety, which, you know, in some cases it was a decade later, led them to really severe depression.
Do you think there's a stigma attached to mental health problems in our youth?
Definitely, and that's what I heard over and over again,
Wow.
is there is a stigma and that people just don't feel comfortable talking about it. That's the main thing, is that these kids are living with it. I think the average time for when you start having symptoms of anxiety or depression to when you actually get help is 8 to 10 years.
Oh, that's too long.
Way too
long, yeah.
And a lot manifests in that time.
Yeah.
And at some points there are some therapies or ways that people try to resolve it, but not everything works for everybody. There is no one cure fits all.
I've heard of wilderness therapy helping. What do you know about that?
It's one of those alternatives to therapy, different than sitting on a couch with a therapist, or even different than medication. And for a lot of people, it's kind of a last resort therapy. It's pretty extreme. In one case, I talked with a family from West Lynn, a 17-year-old, his birthday was yesterday, happy belated birthday, Matt. He has really struggled with social anxiety and depression, and it really impacted his whole family, a family of 4, and they kind of hit a last resort, and they said, we're gonna try wilderness therapy. And it's where he spent 10 weeks this past summer out in the wilderness near Bend. And
10 weeks?
10 weeks with basically little more than a tarp and a foam pad, and with mentors, and just kind of worked out what he was feeling, was able to talk about it. So it was a really extreme situation, but it's one that he came back from, and he really felt a lot better about himself. It's not perfect. That's what they emphasize over and over again. He's going to struggle, but it put him on a good path.
Let's listen to what he has to say.
Yeah.
You know, I was in such a bad depression. I didn't love myself, so I couldn't love others. Mm-hmm. And so slowly through that process, I learned to love myself for who I am and not worry about my insecurities or what other people think. And then I came back, and I can start loving other people and actually build real relationships with other people.
So that was part of an interview I did in Tryon Creek with him. We went on a little wilderness walk to talk about where he's at right now, and we're going to share a lot more about his journey and what his specific wilderness therapy was, because there are a lot of different programs.
Yeah, I wonder why that helped. Is it just being away from social media and stress?
Yeah.
I mean, what is that?
I think that could be part of it. I think it just gave him a lot of time alone to really focus on his feelings and why he didn't love himself. And he said one of the most moving parts of the whole experience was a 3-day period, which was called his solo, where they basically just let him camp by himself for 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
He was like, and it helped him to deal with a lot of his anxieties, because said he was so scared and terrified overnight by himself in the pitch black in a forest. He just said, I just realized, like, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Here's where I'm at. This is what I'm feeling. There are things around me, and we're just gonna roll with it.
A big problem I hear about a lot, because my husband works for a fire department, but is suicide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've talked with quite a few survivors of suicide, so people who know loved ones who've died of suicide. I talked with a dad and daughter duo whose mom/wife died of suicide 10 years ago, and she suffered from bipolar depression. So they talked a lot about mental health, and so they were very aware of her mental health struggles. But Sylvia, the teen, was just 5 years old when it happened.
Wow.
And I talked with Josh, her dad, and he kind of explains, you know, when he came home, he got the call from the chaplain, realized what had happened. He just didn't really know what to do. So here's what he said to that.
I mean, I vividly remember asking the medical examiner, how do I tell my daughter?
And he struggled with it for a little while, but he actually ended up going to the Dougy Center, which helps bereaved children.
That's a great
Huge
place.
resource.
Yeah.
They ended up going there, I think, for 7 years. So
Yeah.
for a long time, but they stress honesty. And so even at 5 years old, he just had to explain to her, your mom's gone, and this
Right.
is why. So let's hear from Sylvia.
I felt really alone at my school for the first few years after she died because I didn't know anyone else who had lost a parent. And at the Dougy Center, I wasn't alone. I wasn't different, and I could see that there was a way to be happy.
So the Dougy Center specifically will pair kids in groups with other kids who have dealt with similar situations.
Right.
So if they've lost a parent who's died of suicide, or they lost a parent or a sibling who died of cancer. So there's different groups that they pair them in, and they kind of see other people who are at different stages of grief, and that's kind of how they cope with it.
Another resource you talk about is Hopeline.
This is brand new. It just launched today. So November 1st is day one for Hopeline. It's based out of Clark County, and it is just another resource for kids to call when they're feeling down. Michael is the creator of it, and he says it's the first line of defense. It's not the cure, but it is a way for these kids to just find someone in a dark time and get a little bit of relief at that point, and then from there they attach them to other resources.
How does that work?
Hopeline?
Yeah.
Well, they basically partner with a bunch of other organizations in Clark County.
So someone will call up though and say this is the situation.
A kid will call up in a crisis.
And then they can figure out what that kid needs.
Exactly. They
Okay.
can basically figure out from what they're saying what kind of help they need. And so they work in partnership with a lot of other resources in Clark County. So he's Michael Miller, who launched it, works in schools, and he says dealing with mental illness and suicide rates is something that he touches on a lot. So here's what he had to say about that.
I go into a public high school now and I say, how many of you know somebody that's attempted suicide or committed suicide? Every hand goes up.
Important note there, and this is part of that discussion around mental health.
That's
and
what he just said is crazy. I mean, you know, that's who knew that?
Yeah, a lot. And like we said earlier, even Matt, the kid who went to wilderness therapy, he says 50% probably of kids that he goes to school with probably deal with anxiety or depression. And a lot of it is the languaging. It's talking about how to talk about mental health. And Michael there just said committed suicide. That is a very common phrase, but it's actually something that a lot of other experts in mental health say we should avoid saying because it sounds like a crime. So you say died of suicide instead.
And we have a website set up, kindisbetter.org.
Yes, kindisbetter.org, and that's where you can go and find all things Kind is Better. All of our stories will be there. If anyone is listening and has a story or a topic that they think we should discuss, you can just go scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can submit story ideas to us. We just at this point are really trying to get a pulse of the community and see where we're at when it comes to mental health.
Genevieve, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll be right back with more AM Northwest on our Kind is Better Day. Stay right there.